Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and since it's the middle of February, the Love Cup has made its once per year return to the Go Battle League. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing how disgusting Trash Wormadam is in this format. Trash Wormadam was always strong in the Love Cup, but in the years since the last time we've had Love Cup, Bug Bite got buffed, and that has turned Trash Wormadam into the king of this meta. I paired up Trash Wormadam with Shadow Milotic and Licky, two anti-fire Pokemon, and went on a 15-5 run to undo all my tanking and climb back into the 3200s. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we've got the battle of Bug Steel types, Trash Wormadam into Shadow Scizor. The thing to watch for in this matchup will be Shadow Scizor's health bar. Keep in mind, they're a Steel type, which means my Bug Bites are resisted, and somehow, despite the fact that my Bug Bites are resisted, I've already farmed through 60% of this Scizor's health bar. Bug Bite on Wormadam is just so overtuned in this meta. Wormadam is just an absolute monster. I decide that I do want to preserve this energy, so after shielding once, I throw one Bug Bite and get a catch and sneak of the Night Slash onto Shadow Milotic. Shadow Milotic absorbs that damage, and in comes Seaking. Now, regular Milotic was typically preferred for the EUIC Cup that was last week, but in this meta, I do think the Shadow Milotic does have some really nice advantages. The Shadow Milotic in particular wins the 1s and 2s against Shadow Scizor, and that is a pretty valuable matchup to pick up. My opponent does full send the Mega Horn, knocking out Milotic, but I was able to get some very nice damage onto my opponent. Unfortunately, Wormadam can't quite get the farm down. I did get very close, so it's going to be all up to Licky to close out this game. In the back is the #1 ranked Pokemon in this meta, Solrock, and unfortunately for Solrock, we're running Shadow Ball Licky. Shadow Ball lands, that's just too much damage onto the Solrock, and now Licky can just farm down the entire team. My opponent does not throw their energy because they know they just cannot win this game. Licky farms down everything to secure the game 1 win. Hopping into game number 2, leading Wormadam into Licky. This is a pretty nice matchup for Wormadam. Wormadam is very happy to play this out, although if possible, I would love to try and catch a Shadow Ball at some point onto my own Licky. Because even though Wormadam is generally favored here, if I can catch a Shadow Ball and save some energy, that would definitely be a pretty big plus. So I'm going to be full sending the Bug Buzz. Bug Buzz lands, big damage onto Licky. I try for the Shadow Ball catch, I don't get it, but my opponent still does end up firing off energy, which is very nice. So I get to absorb some damage on my Licky as my opponent reveals Clefable as their next Pokemon. Clefable does absorb these body slams pretty well, so even though I'm able to make the back-to-back body slams, unfortunately Clefable does not have to respect this damage. And considering that my Milotic is on Dragon Tail, unfortunately I don't have a lot of fast move pressure available into this Mon. They're going to be firing off the Moonblast lands, big damage but not enough to take the knockout. The bulk of Licky is very nice. I'm able to get the shield, I pivot into Wormadam just to try and get a little bit of fast move damage, and Clefable will immediately respond with the Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash is going to land, in comes Solrock. Solrock cannot get the farm down. I hang on with Wormadam, make the Iron Head, and that's going to force a shield. They're able to Psywave down after, but now I have a 2-0 shield Milotic. Milotic not quite able to make the Aqua Tail, as they will more than likely be spamming out a Rock Slide. Rock Slide will be shielded. I immediately undertap the Aqua Tail because I just want this Solrock gone. I know the Solrock was pretty close to a Rock Slide, but picking up that KO is very helpful. My opponent makes a very nice catch. They're able to catch the Aqua Tail onto Licky, but even still, they're just running out of HP on this Clefable. I'm going to wait a turn, try for the catch. I don't get the catch on Licky, but I believe I should be able to get the farm down here with Milotic. Because, unfortunately for my opponent, even with the Meteor Mash bait, they cannot get to the energy needed for the Moonblast, so I get the farm down and take the win. We've got a mirror lead in the next match, Wormadam into Wormadam. In the Wormadam mirror, you typically want to just farm up to 100 before throwing, because you don't want to do what I did here, which is throw your energy right away. This is a pretty big error, because this will allow my opponent to bank energy, save switch into Armarouge. I was so stun locked by the fact that there was an Armarouge on my screen that I let an Incinerate land, and I end up sending in Milotic, but I gave them such a massive energy head start. Now, this is how not to play the Wormadam mirror. Typically, as a Wormadam in a Wormadam mirror, you just want to farm up to 100 energy and fire off the Bug Buzz then, because then it's a lot harder for an opponent to switch something in. So far, this is my first game with a Wormadam mirror, but I have not played it particularly well. Armarouge is going to go for a double shield farm down. I did go for the wrap just to ensure that I would get extra damage on my rollouts, and since they've already boosted up their attack, I will be shielding up the Psyshock. My opponent gets aggressive, pivoting back in the Wormadam. This Bug Buzz that wouldn't have done a lot of damage onto my Wormadam does huge damage onto the Licky. That's why the way that my opponent played this was so much smarter than how I played it. They saved energy in a matchup where it wouldn't have been valuable, and they got huge value out of that Bug Buzz. I'm able to land an Iron Head and farm down. In the back is one of the only Pokemon that I could beat, and that's going to be a Solrock. Solrock takes the knockout with the Weather Ball, but Licky is one off the Shadow Ball. Their switch timer is not up. They're unable to save the Solrock. Shadow Ball lands, taking the knockout. Back in comes Armarouge just to get farmed down. And even though I feel I played that pretty poorly, the team is just so strong that we got the win anyway. Hopping into the next match, we see a pretty spicy Pokemon on the lead in the next match, leading Trash Wormadam into Electrode. Electrode, I believe, runs Discharge and Foul Play. Discharge isn't going to hit very hard. Electrode goes for a Thunderbolt, and that is not a move that I knew that it learned. Thunderbolt thankfully does not take the knockout because Trash Wormadam is so bulky. I return fire with the Bug Buzz, get the shield as my opponent sends in Scizor. My answer to a Scizor save swap on this team is Shadow Milotic. Not only do you have the Bullet Punch resistance, but you just outpace the Scizor so significantly. They go for the Trailblaze, I return fire with the Aqua Tail, and guess what? Shadow Milotic hits so hard that Aqua Tail just already knocks out the Scizor. In the back, that's not what I was expecting to see. That might be the worst case scenario as they reveal Lurantis. But Shadow Milotic's wrap lands, they've already lost 50% of their health bar right away, and I think that I should just be winning this game. Milotic gets KO'd, but I can send in Licky. Back in comes the Electrode. I know Thunderbolt will do some pretty significant damage. I'm going to be shielding because I just want to force my opponent to fire off a superpower. If they're forced to debuff their defense on Lurantis, then the combination of rollouts and bug bites should be able to take the win. The fact that I preserved Licky HP means that I'm so healthy that I don't even think a superpower would actually knock me out. Body Slam will be shielded. I get just shy of Body Slam number 2, and this is it. They need this to knock out, but guess what? It just doesn't. Licky, too bulky. We hang on. Turns out we didn't even need bug bites from the Trash Wormadam. Licky KOs Lurantis, and we get another win. Hopping into the next match, leading Wormadam into Medicham. Now, this is a bit of an interesting matchup for the Wormadam. Wormadam will get pretty significantly outpaced, but the bug bites do add up even against the Pokemon as bulky as Medicham will fire off Dynamic Punch. I'm going to farm up and then go for an Iron Head bait, and my opponent makes a perfect catch onto Seaking. This was incredibly sloppy by me. I should have been watching for a catch, and unfortunately I was not, and it ends up backfiring in the worst way. So now, my opponent has wasted a ton of Trash Wormadam energy. They've played this very well, and I've played this very poorly. This day one of the meta, unfortunately I'm finding out there's quite a bit to learn. Because of the debuff, I don't think that a Body Slam at -1 would quite knock out, so I will go for the Shadow Ball just to be safe. Shadow Ball lands, down goes Seaking, and that is pretty nice. Back in comes the Medicham. Unfortunately, Medicham will not let my Licky make a Shadow Ball, and I will fall to Dynamic Punch. Back in comes the Wormadam, but unfortunately, I'm pretty close to Dynamic Punch range. I think I should survive, but it's not going to be by much. I'm able to hang on. In comes Milotic. Milotic, at the very least, my Dragon Tails are adding up here, but I absolutely have to respect Dynamic. Dynamic will be shielded. My opponent sends in their own Milotic, and this is where being a Shadow Milotic is quite nice. My opponent did not want to shield the first wrap, but suddenly they're losing HP very quickly. I decide that I will shield the first wrap. I know that my opponent will expect me to catch as soon as they make their second wrap, so I'm going to predict that. I'm actually going to stay in one pass when they get to the wrap, and then go for the switch. This way I get to maximize Dragon Tail damage. My opponent is forced to throw because of the bug bite pressure. They have back-to-back moves, but it's only an Aqua Tail. And I have enough energy on the Shadow Milotic that I should be able to outpace the Dry Medicham and take the win. So again, even though I feel that I played this game very poorly, this team is just too strong. We're able to make the back-to-back Aqua Tails, outpacing the Medicham, and even though my opponent wasted an entire Iron Head, 50 energy from my Wormadam, it just does not matter. Shadow Milotic takes the game. We pick up a nice lead in the next match, Wormadam into alomomola, and this is another matchup where it's do as I say, not as I do. As the Trash Dam, you want to farm up to 100 before going for a Bug Buzz. Here, I try and throw 23 Bug Bites in the move. I don't know if it was operator error or just the spinny ball on the top left, but I end up accidentally throwing on alignment. The reason why throwing before you get to 100 energy is a misplay is because after your opponent gets a shield advantage with the Hydro Pump, they can pivot in a sweeper like Crustle, and that can make life very tricky. I'm able to grab a shield with Iron Head, but this Crustle is up a ton of energy, and Crustle could very well sweep my team. this Crustle has so much offensive pressure. We do get the shield call right on the Rock Wrecker, but I'm fully prepared for them to shield and outpace me to another Rock Wrecker. So I'm absolutely shocked when they let the Crustle go. I guess they wanted to save a shield for Shadow Scizor, but unfortunately, by not prioritizing the Crustle, I think I've now just won this game. Even with my opponent catching onto a alomomola, I can just undercharge, farm down, bank an Aqua Tail, and then pivot into Licky. My opponent will fire off their energy right as they make the back-to-back Night Slashes. Back-to-back Night Slashes will not take the knockout, but with a Bullet Punch, it might, so I'm just going to undertap the Body Slam bait. My opponent is forced to shield this, and if they let me get there, I'm just going to go for another Body Slam. Even though it's resisted, Shadow Scizor is extremely frail. The Body Slam is going to put critical damage onto the Scizor. Scizor does get the farm down, but Trash Wormadam will just simply not get knocked out by a Night Slash, so this game is over. My opponent goes for a BM Trailblaze and concedes the match. You gotta respect that. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match, Trash Wormadam into Macargo. Now, this is a very bad matchup. I save switch into Milotic, and my opponent responds with their own Trash Wormadam. Shadow Milotic, if you're up a little bit of energy, can absolutely put in work against a Trash Wormadam. And that's just because Milotic can help exploit the fact that Wormadam's pacing is very slow. Wormadam has insane offensive pressure with Bug Bite, but unfortunately for the Wormadam, if Wormadam ends up being at an energy disadvantage, then things can get bad very, very quickly. Milotic is already almost at 2 more Aqua Tails, meaning that I'm just going to be able to win switch or get both shields. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon as Licky. I thought about going for the wrap, but it looks like I will make it to 2 Aqua Tails. First Aqua Tail is going to connect. Shadow Milotic refusing to get KO'd, and we make Aqua Tail number 2. That gets a shield from my opponent, and unfortunately, I still think I'm probably going to end up losing this game because my opponent has a ton of energy stored on Macargo. Macargo already should be at 80 energy, and they can just Rock Tomb and debuff my poor Licky into oblivion. This is a scenario where it might be better to have a second water type in the back, like alomomola, but I did really like Licky as it just feels a lot more neutral than alomomola ever did. I gotta be honest, that is a very difficult Pokemon name to pronounce if you say it multiple times in a row. I'm struggling over here. So hopefully I will not end up featuring alomomola, so that way I will not have to involve myself with this tongue twister. I'm gonna try and get a farm down with the Wormadam. I get close, but not close enough. Macargo, too bulky, hanging on, making the Rock Tomb. There's the combo play with the Shadow Ball. And unfortunately, this is going to be one of the rare losses that we did have with this team. Shadow Ball lands, and we will take that L. We move to the next match, Trash Wormadam into Clefable. This is a pretty nice matchup. My opponent pivots out, save switching into Licky. I'm going to farm up here, try for a Shadow Ball catch, but my opponent is just too patient. The good news here is even though I gave them a huge energy head start, the Bug Bite damage is actually very, very meaningful. The Bug Bite damage basically means that I need 1 fewer Body Slam, so even though they do have a big energy head start, that Bug Bite damage is not insignificant. I may have to go down a shield to preserve switch advantage, but that will definitely be worth it because I should be able to exit with quite a lot of energy on my Licky, and that energy will add up onto Clefable. Turns out I am a CMP losing Licky in this matchup. My opponent does have the higher attack stat. I fire off Body Slam is going to land, and my opponent's energy advantage is going to get them a shield advantage. I'm going to commit to a farm down. I have to hope that my rollouts will be enough to secure the KO, and it just is. I do have quite a lot of energy. My opponent sends in a alomomola, and unfortunately, I'm only making 1 charge stack, so I will go for the Shadow Ball. But alomomola gets absolutely demolished by Milotic. They pivot into Clefable, and I'm going to respond with Wormadam. I have a huge energy head start on the Wormadam, and that's going to be key for this endgame, because I pretty much already had an Iron Head banked. They fire off Moonblast. That does do massive neutral damage. Moonblast is an incredibly efficient move. I should survive another Moonblast here in case they do have it. It is only going to be a Meteor Mash, though, and that Meteor Mash I think is going to end up costing them, because they just can't really Fairy Wind down after the Meteor Mash. If they had thrown a Moonblast, then they definitely could. My opponent sends in a alomomola trying for a snipe, but they're just not going to get it. The reason why alomomola gets so destroyed by Milotic is just off of pacing. Milotic's pacing is ruthlessly efficient, whereas alomomola, it's very bulky, but his pacing is absolutely awful. They fire off a Psychic, and then just look at this. Milotic farming all the way down. Milotic, the new Kingfish of the Love Cup. Shield comes up as they fire off the Meteor Mash, and I'm already at the back-to-back Aqua Tail, so I'm just going to throw on alignment twice. Aqua Tail number 1 is going to get them low. It turns out we won't even need the Iron Head that we almost had on the Wormadam. Milotic KOs with back-to-back Aqua Tails, and that's a good game. Hopping to the final match, picking up a very nice lead, Trash Wormadam into Milotic. Now, this is the regular Milotic. My opponent does end up over-farming, so I'm very comfortable just letting this go. This Milotic, oh no, my opponent might be out of TMs because they are on Surf on Milotic. Now, Surf generally not preferred. The straight 3 pacing on Aquatail is just so hard to beat. I land the Bug Buzz, get the snipe down with the Bug Bites, and my opponent sends in Licky Licky. I'm going to farm up here, pivot into my own Licky Licky. Tell me that's the Shadow Ball catch. It is the Shadow Ball catch, and now we are in such a good spot. My opponent sends out Krookodile. Krookodile is a very strong Pokemon into Licky Licky, but unfortunately Krookodile, because it's on the Glacier side of things, it does take some pretty significant damage from these Body Slams. Body Slam number 2 is actually going to force a shield. My opponent's going to be forced to fire off a Brick Break. They did do enough damage where Brick Break will actually knock out the Licky Licky, but then I can just simply send in my Shadow Milotic. I'm anticipating they blind through the Brick Break, so I am just going to let this go. My opponent actually went for a Crunch, and I lose big HP. In comes Licky Licky, but even though I've lost a lot of health already, this is where Milotic can just absolutely be a degen. Wrap is going to get the debuff, and I see the win con. The win con is energy on Trash Wormadam. I send in the Trash Wormadam, and because of that Wrap debuff, I'm now going to get a full Bug Bite farm down. I'm going to exit pretty close to 100 energy, and the back-to-back Iron Heads that I'll need to take the win. Back in comes the Krookodile, but the writing's on the wall in this one. There's no way out. Krookodile, just no shields, getting KO'd, and that's a good game. All in all, for day 1 of this meta, I ended up having quite a bit of fun. I do kind of want to branch out from here and try and run some more creative picks. I do really want to test out Rotom, because I think Rotom has some really interesting core breaking potential, especially if people end up running a lot of Bug Steel plus Milotic, because outside of that, it's a very difficult core to break. So day 1 though, oh my goodness, Wormadam was unbelievable. Those boosted Bug Bites, well, at least they are boosted compared to what they were last Love Cup. The buffed Bug Bites just hit way too hard neutrally. They just absolutely shred. It kind of forces people into running fire, and that's where running 2 Pokemon in the back that do well into fire can be very, very nice. I did Shadow Milotic and Licky Licky. You could potentially run a wide variety of different other water types instead of the Milotic, or end up running a second water type instead of the Licky Licky. If you have the Shadow Milotic though, I think this is the meta where it can shine. The Shadow on Milotic felt like a benefit the entire day, whereas in EUIC, I definitely felt like there was some matchups where it ended up being more of a hindrance. In this meta, Shadow Milotic felt absolutely unbelievable. And Licky Licky, well, it's just kind of Licky Licky. It just provides neutral strength to the team, and another very strong check against those pesky fire types that Wormadam doesn't want to see. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. Thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.